Hey, everybody, it's Rick. Welcome to the strategy session. I'm joined tonight by Stuart. We have been having a ringside seat, as every American has, to the impending collapse of the U.S. economy based on a trade war, based on idiot ideas by idiot people. We've got Donald Trump golfing during the apocalypse. We've got a potential war with Iran as the half the B-2 bomber fleet, a formidable number of aircraft, are over in the Gulf, and they're talking about bombing Iran very soon. We've got Israel given a green light to go finish the job, I'm told, in Gaza. We've got Elon and the Trump team fighting and snapping at each other. The boys are fighting, and America's about to get what they voted for Trump to get, and they're going to get it good and hard. Welcome to the strategy session, folks. Stuart, let's get going.
This is going
in your
great.
lifetime. Have you ever seen a president make a bigger and more consequential economic mistake than Trump has made in this trade war?
Yeah, it is the biggest fuck you to America. And he's surrounded himself by these billionaires who aren't going to be affected in ways that matter to them. And it's just extraordinary the degree to which they just don't seem to even care about what people think about them.
Right.
And I think that tension between those in Congress whose seats are going to be vulnerable, which is an ever expanding list.
Yes.
I mean, sort of back to what happened, in your backyard, they reduced the margin of victory by 50% in these very red districts. So, I'm a product of Mississippi Public Schools, but you do the math on reducing 50% of Republican vote in all these districts, and all of a sudden you're talking about a whole bunch of seats becoming vulnerable. And I think it also plays into candidate recruitment. The Democrats should be able to recruit better candidates now.
Absolutely.
But it really is just on Social Security saying, well, if you miss a month, it doesn't matter. The idea that they're turning over Social Security to these 19-year-old kids, it's just extraordinary. And they don't care about the stock market. And now this sort of become this thing on the right that, well, money doesn't matter. It's really going to be about Bitcoin. It's just, it really is just extraordinary.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's like sort of shocked me the most is both Congress and the markets. When Biden was president, the markets were up and up and up and up and up. There was a lot of good news to be had. And the markets responded to that good news by going up. That's what markets tend to do. Right now, the market's being given awful, terrible, apocalyptically bad news. And it's going down finally because of it. It's responding to actual cues. But there's a certain psychology among both Republicans in Congress and among folks on Wall Street that every time they think that Trump might not be doing something crazy, the market rockets back up. Every time they think he's bluffing or it might be a scheme or a strategy or a deal, the market goes back up. Republican congressmen and senators are in the same exact boat. I talked to a Republican staffer today who told me, we're watching the market and calculating the number of seats we're going to lose.
Yeah.
And everybody is holding on to the belief that this is all a Trump bullshit game, that he's going to pull the rug out and say, joking, ha, and everything will go back to normal. I kind of think they've gone too far on that. What do you think?
Yeah, look, this goes back to this thing that you wrote about. And let me just say again, if you have not read Everything Trump Touches Dies by Rick, it really is the seminal work on the Trump era. And it is proven to be extraordinarily prescient about 7 years forward. And it's going to be prescient 8 years forward. So, one of the points you made in that book was Trump, when people feel this need to give to Trump the credit for some grand strategy.
Right.
They're playing 5-dimension chess or something,
Right.
It's because if that's not the case, then he's a fucking idiot. And we're all in deep shit. And that is the case.
There's never
we don't want to admit that. It's like the pilot gets on and he sounds drunk and the plane's going crazy through the air and you go, he's just kidding.
Right.
No, you're going to crash. You're going to die. And it's a weird human need and a cover up at a certain point. But there is no end game here. Who's advising him? Peter Navarro, a guy who, last seen getting out of jail, who's an idiot, who, as the Lincoln Project pointed out, writes books and quotes himself,
right?
Names spelled backwards. This is.
It's like the three dipshits of the financial apocalypse that are advising him. Peter Navarro, who, folks, when I tell you that I looked for a serious economist when I wrote the first book to tell me that Peter Navarro was some kind of weird mad genius, I could not find one. I went to one of the biggest hedge fund guys in Wall Street and I said, "What do you think about this Navarro guy?" And he's like, "It's a fucking idiot. He's a small timer. He's a fucking idiot." Howard Lutnick, who was out there saying, "Well, if the people complaining about not getting their Social Security are fraudsters." Oh, okay.
Because if my mother-in-law,
watch that third rail there, Howard.
If she missed a check, he said, if my mother-in-law missed a Social Security check, it wouldn't be a big deal to her. I said, well, I guess not.
Yeah, I guess you're a fucking multi-billionaire who runs Cantor Fitzgerald, dick. But those two have been so, and Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, who's another guy who is out there trying to blow smoke and sunshine up everybody's ass and say, "Oh, this is fine. Don't worry. It's all under control." And while he's going to other countries saying, "Please don't put your tariffs on. I'm trying to fix this behind the scenes." These three people have empowered Trump on this. And they by empowered, I mean, they've decided that they can't resist his bullshit on it. And the economy is about to take a absolutely monstrous, crash out across the board, folks. I hate telling you guys this because while I am not always a ray of sunshine, I try not to be too depressing. But the announcement you saw today that Apple is not going to build $1 billion worth of infrastructure in Ohio because they don't know what the market's going to do now. And the Ford and Stellantis are laying people off already. John Deere is about to do a massive layoff, I heard this afternoon. All of these companies that rely on exports and rely on inexpensive imports to provide Americans with products that they want at a price they want to pay, they're not going to do it. And there's a lie inside of Trumpism. I think it's really important, Stuart, that we articulate for people. The right is saying his defenders, and there are not as many as you would have thought. They're saying, "Oh, well, all these factories are going to be built in America, and they're going to build all these things that we build in South Korea or China or Indonesia or Vietnam." If you are a company and you watch Trump change one day to the next on tariffs, change his mind over and over and over again on tariffs. If you're a company, you're not like Apple, you're not going to say, "Okay, I'm going to go build a brand new plant to build engines for Jeeps in Indiana and spend all this money." If Trump is going to pull the rug out the next day, change his mind, get bored, get tired, walk away, pretend that this was all a great joke, it's not going to happen. They're not going to invest that money because they don't have certainty with Trump.
Yeah,
So,
at the root of this, it seems to me, is a solution in search of a problem. America has been the envy of the world with our economy, particularly post-COVID, but before.
Yeah.
I mean, where else do you want to start a company? Just pick. I mean, you can say, "Well, I want to go to Singapore." So, give me a break. That's just sort of a tax haven and a regulation haven. But like a serious country, like a democracy,
right,
like a Western democracy. Where else? You want to go to Brussels? You want to go? I know a bunch of people that live in these. They all look at America. They all want to come to America to start companies.
Yeah, of course.
To this, and it's this idea that because we're not making as much steel, we're in a crisis. When you could walk through Pittsburgh and feel the ash coming down from the smelters, There were not iPhones. There was
Right.
not an internet. There was not Apple. Our great industries of technology did not exist. And it's a good trade if you just had to. We're going to get steel, which, not great for the environment, not great working environment, all of that, versus a super engine of technology that is changing the world, that
Right.
defines what American innovation is. Take that trade. Yes. And it's a strange sort of time warp that Trump, you've written about this, caught in. He got on this tariff thing in the 80s. And
first time on Larry King back in 1987 was the earliest I could find, which is nuts.
Yeah. And in part, he was doing it because, Reagan was strongly for free markets, strongly against tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what Trump was doing in part is sort of a residual, I don't know, there's got to be somebody out there who's screwing me that he has in his psyche because he's so insecure. But also, I think it was sort of to define himself as more of a Democrat. I'm going to be more of a populist here.
Right.
It was sort of like a sort of left wing, we need to not have these free markets and stuff. So it was when he was trying to define himself as something other than like a Reagan Republican.
Sure. Yeah. Yep.
But the real world consequences. I mean, we've had trillions of dollars of wealth that have been erased.
Trillions.
And
somewhere between 10 and 14 trillion dollars is gone.
It's, you really hit on it. That reliability and predictability is America's greatest asset. That is why we're the currency of the world. This is why when you have these alliances, that we've had the greatest period of growth and prosperity in the history of Europe because of America. This has been a golden age, and it's like we're reluctant to admit it. And I just think it's so crazy.
Yeah.
And people are going to be living in this reality now.
It is. So, folks, we've got a lot of questions in the chat about the Supreme Court decisions in the last few days. And I'll say this right off the bat. They're disturbing. Look, some of the procedural stuff, like the cases of repatriating some of the folks who were not supposed to be sent down to the El Salvador prison colony, that I'm less surprised about. That's sort of mechanical, ministerial stuff that the court's going to have to work out. I am concerned about the ruling on the Alien Enemies Act. I am concerned about the fact that today, Carolyn Leavitt, the White House press secretary, went to the podium and said, we are talking about how we can ship American citizens to El Salvador. Now, I'm just going to tell you guys, I'm not in favor of El Salvador. If you want to ship me somewhere else, I prefer a Scandinavian nation or somewhere more temperate. But I've lived in the humidity here in Florida long enough. But joking aside, this is going to be the great definitional challenge of the Roberts Supreme Court by orders of magnitude. Whether the Roberts Supreme Court will allow the Trump administration to make a unparalleled and untrammeled claim of executive power is the central question of our time. Congress will not stop him. Can't. Won't. That's why we have to take Congress back. I want to talk about the 26 elections. We have some questions about that too. But, I mean, Stuart, right now, I think we're in a perilous moment for this Supreme Court. It is very close to just being an adjunct of the Trump White House in the eyes of a lot of people. And in the eyes of a lot of MAGAs, Amy Coney Barrett straying from the path and voting against Trump twice now has sent them into an absolute outrage. But, where do you see the court headed in the next few weeks on this? Because Roberts is going to be under the gun like he's never been before. Yeah,
I think basically we're seeing why the Supreme Court is the lowest approval ratings it's ever had in the history of the country. Mm-hmm. There's two justices on there that really you never have to wonder how they're going to vote. I mean, there's really no point even arguing anything in front of them. Right. One of whom has the ethics of an oligarch's mistress. I'll go on vacations with you and everything. I was writing a piece that's going to come out in Lincoln Square tomorrow about this. It seems to me that if you're a state attorney general in a state in which people, American citizens, are being arrested and are being detained and kidnapped, which is really what it becomes, and sent to another country, that we agree that's illegal, right? So what do we do? What do we call people who do things illegal? We call them criminals. What do? We arrest them. So what my proposal would be that these state attorney generals, they start charging those involved with this rendition.
Correct.
For kidnapping, for the crimes that they are, it's human trafficking. And, we have other countries where we as American power involved in the CIA have renditioned people. They have charged those people.
Yes.
A lot of these people are not going to go back to Italy, where a particular case where it happened.
Yeah.
But why that, if you decide who is involved in making these decisions and who actually did this and charge them under existing laws, and it's against the law to kidnap in every state. And this
every
is
state
that Trump can't pardon you. I think it would be sobering to him. In the same way we hear over and over again in the military how they're taught, do not obey an illegal act.
Because the military is going to be tested on that very soon, I think, because Trump is going to want the military, and he may federalize the National Guard to get there to do it. That's the legal-ish. That's the ostensibly legal path to do this. He may federalize the National Guard and demand they participate in domestic law enforcement operations. It will overturn 250 years of American tradition, posse comitatus, all that stuff. And folks, you have to hope, and if you've got a military family member, I hope you'll remind them of their oath. And they do not swear an oath to Donald Trump or to a president. They swear an oath to the Constitution. And it is a look, that is a moment where I think that we are in the maximum degree of national peril. They're talking about Alien Enemies Act and Insurrection Act and formalizing something along these lines sometime in the next few weeks. If that happens, my view is it demands a massive national protest response at every level. Every blue state governor, every blue state attorney general, they have power in this country, guys. The 10th Amendment still matters. It's with their executive and their legislative powers and their legal powers. It's going to demand that Americans hold these people to account, that you blow the Congress the hell out. And it's also going to demand that Americans say to the people that are taking these actions on Trump's orders that when the tide turns, when the tide changes, when the Republicans aren't in control of the House again, or the Republicans aren't in control of the Senate again, or the Republicans aren't in control of the White House again, that the "I was just following orders" defense falls apart rather quickly. We've seen this not only in Germany, we saw it in Argentina, we saw it in South Africa, we've seen it in many other countries that have been ruled for some period of time by an autocratic or an authoritarian system. And in the modern era, you will know who these people are. We will know who pulls the triggers. We will know who orders the roundups. Those people, while they think right now they are immortal and invulnerable and nothing can ever hurt them, that's what the people who sat in the dock at Nuremberg thought too. That's what the people who sat on the dais at Nuremberg as they were sentenced to death or life imprisonment thought too, that I was just following orders was a sufficient defense.
Yeah, if I was Tom Holman, I would be reading up on what happened to the Argentine admirals and how they were held accountable. What happened in Chile when those who did this under Pinochet were held accountable. And I think that this is really part of the tragedy of the failure of the Justice Department in the Biden era.
100%.
You have Trump, who clearly tried to overthrow the government of the United States, clearly tried to end free elections, was not held accountable. And I think that the danger of that, of course, is what we used to say as Republicans and all these ads that you and I made. How many ads did we make about law and order? I mean, hundreds.
Hundreds.
You know,
hundreds.
We could buy Tesla if we had like $100 for each one we made. And, you know, it was all, and we always use this common sense kind of logic. It was, well, if it's illegal, they're criminals. They should be held accountable. And that same standard now applies. This is just illegal actions that is criminal, and they should be held accountable. And I think you really hit it, Rick, that it is naive to think that they will not be held accountable. And if I was one of them, I would not want to bet on that.
Yep. And look, Trump is old. He is the actuarial tables are going to come knocking loud on his door, given his lifestyle and his age at some point. And the country has swung back and forth in the past. We've never swung this far out toward the crazy edge, but there are still more of us than there are of them, folks. And there are still more Americans who do not want to see their fellow Americans illegally deported to a for-profit prison camp in El Salvador and in absolute defiance of the rule of law and of due process and of habeas corpus and of fundamental things that if you don't have those rights as an American, if you don't have the right to be secure in your home, if you don't have the right to be secure in your person, if you don't have the right to an attorney, then the people that are taking those rights do not deserve any kind of obedience to their orders from the military, from law enforcement. And look, folks, there will be people in the military who will follow those orders. There will be people in law enforcement who follow those orders. I am hoping the day he orders this, that the Joint Chiefs of Staff walk out of the fucking building. Just say, nope, not us, pal. Find somebody else. Many of them will try to convince themselves like, well, if I'm not here, then it would be much worse. No, yeah. The correct moral and political and leadership response is to walk out of the building when he makes those orders. But Stuart, I mean, I think that in part, though, the fear that they're trying to induce in everybody right now is part of this. This is partly to make you guys afraid.
100%. Look, this goes back to Timothy Snyder's, I think it's his first rule in his great book on tyranny: do not obey in advance.
Right.
And what, Jonathan Last wrote, I thought just a typically brilliant.
He's so good.
He's so good. And if you guys don't read Jonathan Last in the Bulwark, you should. He's one of the few writers out there that I never really know what he's going to say until I read it. He made the point that those of us in the Republican Party who never believed what could happen with the Republican Party and led us to be where we are now, being labeled anti-Trump, which merely means that we're still trying to hold on to what we said that we believe because we actually believed it. He says, we were just the precursors to what's happening with big law.
Sure.
What's happened with these academic institutions. For the life of me, I cannot understand why Columbia University, with a massive endowment,
billions,
and Harvard, which is basically a hedge fund that offers classes, why are they adhering to this? Why aren't they standing up? It's incredibly telling. It goes back again to, how did 1930s Germany happen? And look, just to clear the air, it was this rule that, anytime you talked about what happened in Nazi Germany, you trivialized it because nothing's going to be like that. I don't think that's the case. We're not saying it's going to end up like that.
Right.
You see the same human response that is trying to rationalize. So you take a guy like Bill Ackman, who, a hedge fund guy, Pershing Square, famously was for Trump, went all over the internet, went crazy, all this stuff about Trump. Now his company has lost a quarter of its value under Trump, a quarter of its value. And he's still kind of trying to justify it.
Yep.
And it's just a really tragic human instinct that you just cannot surrender to.
Yeah, I wrote about it last week about they try again to force themselves back in this frame where they're like, well, it must be some plan I can't see. He must have some secret power of negotiation that I'm not picking up on, and he'll change course because nobody would be this dumb. Nobody would do something this destructive. Nobody would do something this crazy. And folks, it's what they'll do. We had a question about the missile parade coming up on Donald Trump's birthday. I want to point two things out. Wrote a piece about it today in Lincoln Square. All dictator energy. Donald Trump has wanted a massive military parade in Washington since his first term. I actually wrote about it in the first book because people were sending me stuff about it from inside the White House, and I was dying. It was so hilariously pathetic. And look, first off, I have nothing against military parades. In fact, I helped organize the parade after Desert Storm ended. I helped coordinate that with all the agencies in the federal government that we worked with to fly B-2 bombers over the city and all the hoo-ha, the whole thing. But military parades have traditionally been to celebrate the martial prowess of American men and women in uniform, to celebrate their victories, to celebrate the things they did on the battlefield, to celebrate achievements. There was a parade after we won the war in Europe, a parade after we won the war in Japan. A parade is not a bad thing. But this parade has two things about it that are un-American in every way. First off, it's on the president's birthday. That's some Kim Jong-un shit right there. That's some North Korean Juche shit right there. You don't do the parade on the dear leader's birthday unless you are not in a republic or a democracy anymore. You do that in autocratic systems. The second thing is Trump desperately wants this associative power of military strength to be reflected on him. As I said today in the article, Trump's military, prowess was never tested because of the bone spurs. He did win the storming of Whore Valley, the Battle of Studio 54, and came ashore at Turtle Bay in New York City during the 1970s, which he called his Vietnam.
Yeah, but you're not aware of this, folks. You go on the internet, find it. He referred to not getting a sexually transmitted disease, the danger of it, as being in Vietnam. That was his
Vietnam.
His Vietnam. And this guy's president of the United States.
But it shows you, and if you want to trigger Trump, folks, Trump supporters, just mention the suckers and losers comment that he made in France, which was verified by any number of people, and that's one of the things that particularly triggers them in a fundamental way. But if you don't think suckers and losers was bad enough, let's watch the ad we put out from Lincoln today about what Trump did as 4 American heroes who died in an exercise in Lithuania last week. When they came home this week, what Trump was doing.
When American troops perish in the line of duty, the remains are treated with the greatest honor and quiet dignity. They are placed aboard special Air Force transport planes and returned to their home soil and into the grieving arms of their loved ones. 4 U.S. service members defending our interests and alliances in Europe perished last week. Every president has accepted the responsibility to greet our fallen heroes. It doesn't matter the party. Where is their president today? Golfing. Again. So as the families of these 4 lost heroes contemplate life without their husbands, brothers, fathers, or sons, Donald Trump is showing them the respect he thinks they deserve by golfing. Again.
That's having nothing to do with that's such a great ad. It's so powerful. And the tone of it is in sadness, not anger.
Yeah.
Which is so appropriate for this moment.
it breaks my heart to think about that. And I have been to Andrews during a casualty recovery when I worked years ago. It is the most quiet, solemn, terrible thing you'll ever experience. It is just, and it is nearly silent. And the fact that he couldn't bother and doesn't care and doesn't give a shit about what people think about him, especially in that one area, I hope that folks in uniform think about that. Because if you do obey his illegal orders, he will do nothing for you. He will let you dangle. He will let you dance the Danny Deaver, as they used to say. He will let you go to jail. He will be protected. He'll say it's an official act. He'll be protected. But if you're in uniform, think about how he treats your fallen comrades, and think about what he would do to protect himself after you commit atrocities against American citizens. I hope folks in uniform think about that a lot, because you're going to have a decision to make in the very near future. Somebody asked if we were going to stand in front of the birthday tanks. Why not? I will. Anyway, folks, thank you so much for coming on the strategy session tonight. Sorry we ended on kind of a down note, but the world is on fire, in fact, at the moment. We're doing everything we can over at Lincoln to push back on it. Folks, we're just absolutely thrilled and honored by the response to Lincoln Square so far. I can't tell you enough how much every day Stuart and Lisa and Joe and the rest of the team and I talk about this. The membership is growing wildly. Subscriptions are growing. The response to the stuff that we're putting out has been just absolutely gracious by everybody. And we just cannot thank you enough. We hope you'll follow us on Lincoln Square over on Substack. You can catch my podcast on the Enemies List and also on the Lincoln Project podcast. You catch Joe Trippy's That Trippy Show. Maya May is Punching Up. There are more things that I can think about right now in the whole package. And we were bringing new content to Lincoln Square every week. And keeping this conversation with you folks going right now in the pro-democracy space is really vital. And keep your spirits up, folks. It's a long fight ahead, and we're going to keep swinging.
And let me just add that you should definitely be reading and subscribing to Rick Wilson's Substack. I read it every day, and I see a lot of Rick, and I read it every day, and I still find it fascinating. He's writing some for Lincoln Square, and we're lucky to have him. But really, you should subscribe to both. It's Substack has become a place really to express your values by what you subscribe to and by what you are supporting. So thank you to everybody.
Yep. Thanks, folks. We will see you again next Tuesday. Also, Carolyn Levitt.